In the wild's most unforgiving corners, what begins as tradition and skill can collapse into chaos within seconds. Campsites, riverbanks, and cabins, all thought safe, become battlegrounds when instincts collide with raw power. From a grizzly's 3-minute rampage along Russia's Kutu River to a canoe ambush in British Columbia's fog, these stories stretch across continents and dangers few live to tell. In this video, we'll uncover 6 chilling encounters that reveal how quickly the hunter's world can turn into a fight for survival. The Kutu River carved its way through the dense taiga of Russia's Amur region like a silver thread through emerald fabric. This remote wilderness, hundreds of kilometers from the nearest settlement, had witnessed countless hunting expeditions over the decades. The river's banks were thick with alder thickets and towering birch trees, creating a perfect habitat for the massive Ussuri brown bears that roamed these forests. Local hunters knew this territory well, understanding both its bounty and its dangers. On the morning of July 17, 2025, 10 experienced hunters had established their camp along a bend in the Kutu River. The group consisted of seasoned Siberian outdoorsmen, each carrying rifles ranging from reliable SKS carbines to powerful .375 H&H Magnum hunting rifles. Among them was Dmitry Volkov, a weathered hunter in his 60s who had brought along his 17-year-old daughter Anastasia Volkova to observe her first serious bear hunting expedition. Dmitry had been hunting these forests for over 4 decades. He understood the rhythms of the wilderness, the subtle signs that indicated bear presence, and the precautions necessary when entering territory where massive predators ruled supreme. His decision to bring Anastasia stemmed from his desire to pass down traditional hunting knowledge before age forced his retirement from these dangerous expeditions. The camp had been carefully positioned upstream from a known bear crossing, where the animals frequently traveled between feeding areas. The hunters had spent the previous evening checking their equipment, discussing strategy, and sharing stories around a carefully controlled fire. Their plan was straightforward: establish positions at first light and wait for bears moving along established game trails. As dawn approached, the forest began stirring with natural sounds. Birds called from hidden perches while small animals rustled through undergrowth. The temperature hovered just above freezing, creating misty conditions that limited visibility but also helped mask human scent. The hunters moved into predetermined positions, spreading along a 200-meter stretch of riverbank. Anastasia had been instructed to remain near the camp, observing from a safe distance while her father and his companions pursued their quarry. However, as the morning progressed and the fire began dying, she decided to gather additional kindling from a fallen tree located approximately 50 meters downstream from the main camp. At precisely 6:47 in the morning, according to later investigations, a massive male Ussuri brown bear emerged from dense alder thickets directly upwind from the hunting party. The animal stood nearly 4 meters tall on its hind legs and weighed an estimated 800 kilograms. Its thick, dark brown coat rippled with muscle as it tested the air, immediately detecting the concentrated human scent emanating from the camp area. The bear's reaction was instantaneous and violent. Rather than retreating as most bears would when encountering humans, this particular animal charged directly toward the nearest hunter with terrifying speed. The first victim, Sergei Petrov, managed to fire a single shot from his SKS before the bear's massive paw connected with his chest, crushing his ribcage and launching him backward into a birch tree with fatal force. Gunfire erupted from multiple positions as the remaining hunters attempted to bring down the charging predator. The bear absorbed several direct hits from high-powered rifles, including shots from .375 H&H Magnum cartridges capable of stopping elephants. However, the animal's massive size, thick hide, and extreme aggression allowed it to continue its rampage despite suffering mortal wounds. Viktor Kozlov fired 3 rounds from his hunting rifle before the bear reached his position. The animal's claws raked across his torso, tearing through heavy winter clothing and flesh underneath. Viktor collapsed, critically injured but still conscious enough to witness the continued carnage unfolding around him. The bear moved with surprising speed between targets, utilizing the dense vegetation and uneven terrain to its advantage. Its massive jaws clamped down on Alexei Romanov's shoulder, shaking the hunter like a rag doll before hurling him against a cluster of rocks near the river's edge. More gunfire rang out, but panic and the bear's erratic movements made accurate shooting nearly impossible. Pavel Mikhailov and Boris Fedorov attempted to coordinate their fire from elevated positions, but the bear's unpredictable path through the camp area prevented clear shots. The animal crashed through their tent, destroying equipment and scattering supplies while continuing its deadly assault on anyone within reach. Within 90 seconds of the initial attack, 5 hunters lay dead or dying. The surviving members attempted to regroup, but the bear's relentless aggression and apparent immunity to gunshot wounds created an atmosphere of pure terror. Yuri Antonov managed to empty his rifle's magazine into the animal's flank before massive claws opened his throat, ending his resistance permanently. The final 3 hunters, including experienced tracker Nikolai Stepanov, made their last stand near the riverbank. Their combined firepower finally began affecting the bear's movement, but not before the animal had claimed 2 more victims. Only Viktor Kozlov remained alive among the original 10 hunters, critically wounded but conscious enough to play dead while the bear investigated the devastated campsite. Meanwhile, Anastasia had heard the initial gunshots and instinctively hidden beneath a massive fallen log approximately 70 meters from the main action. The rotting trunk provided excellent concealment, while allowing her to observe the horrific scene unfolding near the camp. She watched in terror as the bear methodically moved through the area, investigating bodies and destroyed equipment. After completing its rampage, the bear approached her hiding spot, its massive snout pressed against the fallen log, hot breath steaming in the cold air as powerful claws scraped against bark inches from her trembling body. For several terrifying minutes, the predator attempted to reach her hiding place, gouging deep marks in the wood while she remained perfectly still. Eventually, the bear's interest waned and it lumbered away into the dense forest, leaving behind a scene of unprecedented destruction. Anastasia remained hidden for another hour before cautiously emerging to check for survivors. She found Viktor Kozlov barely alive, his injuries severe but not immediately fatal. Together they waited for rescue while surrounded by the bodies of 9 experienced hunters who had underestimated the lethal potential of Russia's largest predator. The Kutu River attack remains the deadliest bear encounter in recorded Russian hunting history, a sobering reminder of the raw power lurking within the Siberian wilderness. The rolling hills of Castilla-La Mancha stretched endlessly under the October sun of 2022, their oak-covered slopes dotted with ancient stone walls and forgotten hunting paths. This central region of Spain had witnessed countless generations of hunters pursuing wild boar through its dense scrubland, where centuries of tradition met the primal challenge of tracking one of Europe's most dangerous game animals. The area's reputation for producing massive tuskers drew hunters from across the continent, though locals understood that success often came with considerable risk. Javier Morales adjusted his grip on the well-worn 12-gauge shotgun as he moved silently through the thick oak scrub. The 43-year-old construction worker from Madrid had been hunting these hills since childhood, learning the craft from his grandfather, who had tracked boar through these same thickets decades earlier. His 3 Podenco dogs ranged ahead, their excited baying echoing off limestone outcroppings as they followed fresh scent trails through the undergrowth. The morning air carried the distinctive musk of wild pig, mixed with the earthy scent of decomposing oak leaves and the sharp fragrance of wild rosemary. Javier had positioned himself along a known game trail where boar frequently traveled between feeding areas and water sources. His shotgun was loaded with powerful Brennecke slugs, specifically chosen for their ability to penetrate thick hide and heavy bone structure. The first sign of movement came from a cluster of young oak trees approximately 50 meters ahead. A medium-sized sow emerged cautiously, followed by 3 spotted piglets that stayed close to their mother's flanks. Javier watched through his scope as the family group moved across the trail, knowing that disturbing a sow with young would only complicate his hunt for a mature boar. He allowed the pigs to pass undisturbed, maintaining his position while the Podencos continued working scent trails further downhill. Local hunting ethics emphasized patience and selectivity, targeting only mature male boar while preserving breeding stock for future generations. Javier had learned this philosophy from experienced hunters who understood that sustainable hunting required careful decision-making. Minutes passed in relative silence before the dogs' baying intensified significantly. Their excited voices indicated they had located something substantial, likely a mature boar that would provide both challenge and reward. Javier began moving toward the sound, carefully placing each step to avoid alerting his quarry while maintaining readiness for sudden encounters. The massive tusker exploded from cover without warning. The animal burst through dense undergrowth like a furry missile, its distinctive curved tusks gleaming in filtered sunlight as it charged directly toward Javier's position. The boar weighed at least 280 pounds, its muscular body rippling with power as it covered ground with surprising speed. Javier raised his shotgun instinctively, finding his target in the scope as the distance closed rapidly. He fired a Brennica slug at the animal's shoulder, hoping to anchor it with bone-shattering impact. However, the slug struck at an angle, glancing off thick shoulder muscle and failing to penetrate vital organs as intended. The wounded boar's momentum carried it directly into Javier, slamming him backward into a cluster of thorny bushes that tore through his heavy jacket and scraped exposed skin. The animal's weight pressed against him while sharp hooves scrambled for purchase on uneven ground. Curved tusks swept dangerously close to his torso as the boar attempted to inflict serious damage on its perceived attacker. Javier's wind was knocked out by the initial impact, leaving him gasping, while sharp thorns continued penetrating his clothing. He managed to roll sideways, avoiding a potentially fatal thrust from the boar's right tusk, while reaching for the .44 Magnum revolver holstered on his belt. The handgun represented his last line of defense against an animal capable of inflicting mortal wounds within seconds. The boar thrashed around him, confused by the thorny vegetation but still determined to eliminate the threat. Javier fired his revolver twice at point-blank range, the heavy bullet striking the animal's chest and shoulder with tremendous force. The impact staggered the boar but failed to drop it immediately, demonstrating the incredible toughness that made wild pig hunting so dangerous. Meanwhile, his Podencos arrived at the scene, baying loudly while circling the wounded animal. Their presence helped distract the boar from Javier, allowing him to extract himself from the thorny bushes while keeping his revolver trained on the still dangerous pig. The dogs maintained their distance, understanding instinctively that wounded boar could kill them easily. The boar finally staggered backward, its strength ebbing as blood loss took effect. Javier remained ready with his revolver while assessing his own injuries, discovering several cracked ribs and numerous thorn punctures through his jacket. His hunting experience had taught him that wounded animals could rally unexpectedly, making premature celebration potentially fatal. After confirming the boar was deceased, Javier spent considerable time dragging the massive carcass from the dense scrubland to more accessible terrain. The physical effort aggravated his rib injuries, but Spanish hunting tradition demanded that successful hunters recover their game personally whenever possible. Hours later, examining his prize, Javier reflected on the lessons learned during his close encounter. Wild boar possessed intelligence, cunning, and physical capabilities that demanded absolute respect from hunters. Their ability to absorb tremendous damage while maintaining aggressive behavior made them among Europe's most formidable game animals. The experience reinforced his understanding that success in boar hunting required not only marksmanship and equipment, but also quick thinking, physical conditioning, and considerable luck when facing an enraged tusker in dense cover. The remote wilderness of northwestern Montana stretched endlessly under September's star-filled sky in 2019, where ancient pine forests concealed countless predators within their shadowy depths. This isolated region, accessible only by narrow logging roads and hiking trails, attracted serious hunters seeking encounters with North America's most formidable wildlife. The area's reputation for producing massive grizzly bears drew experienced outdoorsmen willing to accept significant risks in pursuit of once-in-a-lifetime trophies. Eric Solberg had constructed his hunting cabin 3 years earlier, positioning the sturdy log structure near a natural clearing where game animals frequently grazed during early morning and evening hours. The 38-year-old electrical contractor from Billings understood that successful hunting required patience, preparation, and respect for the dangerous predators that ruled these mountains. His cabin featured reinforced walls constructed from 8-inch diameter pine logs, heavy shutters covering each window, and a solid oak door secured with industrial-strength hardware. Eric had designed the structure specifically to withstand harsh winter conditions and provide security during extended hunting trips in predator territory. The September evening had proceeded normally, with Eric cleaning his hunting gear while a small fire crackled in the stone fireplace. His .375 Ruger hunting rifle leaned against the wall within easy reach, loaded with premium ammunition capable of stopping dangerous game at close range. Outside, wind moved through pine branches while distant owl calls echoed across the valley floor. Eric retired to his sleeping bag around 11 o'clock, exhausted from a long day of tracking elk through difficult terrain. The cabin's thick walls muffled most external sounds, creating a cocoon of relative silence that helped him relax after the day's physical exertion. His hunting experience had taught him to sleep lightly in predator country, maintaining subconscious awareness of unusual sounds that might indicate danger. At 3:17 in the morning, a low rumbling growl penetrated the cabin's walls, instantly jolting Eric from deep sleep. The sound seemed to originate from directly outside, suggesting that something large had approached his shelter during the night. Initially, he hoped the noise came from a distant animal, perhaps a bull elk challenging rivals during rutting season. However, the walls suddenly shook as massive claws raked across exterior logs, creating deep gouges in seasoned pine while announcing the presence of something considerably more dangerous than elk. Eric realized immediately that a mature grizzly bear had discovered his cabin and was investigating the structure with characteristic persistence. The bear's massive weight pressed against the wall as it tested the building's structural integrity. Eric could hear heavy breathing and occasional grunts as the animal explored the cabin's perimeter, searching for potential entry points while following scent trails that led to stored venison hanging in the rafters. Eric fumbled for his flashlight and rifle in complete darkness, his heart hammering against his ribcage as adrenaline flooded his system. Years of hunting experience had prepared him for dangerous encounters, but facing a mature grizzly while trapped inside a small cabin presented unique challenges that required careful thinking under extreme stress. The bear moved to the front door, where reinforced oak construction represented the cabin's strongest defensive feature. However, even heavy timber seemed inadequate when massive paws began testing the portal's resistance to determined assault. The doorframe creaked ominously as 900 pounds of muscle and bone applied pressure to weak points in the structure. Eric positioned himself near a side window, knowing that confronting the bear required strategic thinking rather than panic. He needed clear sight lines while maintaining protective cover, understanding that wounded bears often became exponentially more dangerous than healthy ones. His .375 Ruger contained 5 rounds of premium ammunition, enough to stop most dangerous game if properly placed. The grizzly suddenly slammed against the door with terrifying force, splintering the heavy frame and sending shock waves through the entire structure. Stored supplies tumbled from shelves while the fireplace poker clattered across wooden floorboards, creating additional noise that seemed to encourage the bear's aggressive behavior. Eric fired a warning shot through the window, hoping to discourage further assault without wounding the animal unnecessarily. The muzzle flash illuminated the bear's massive form for a split second, revealing a mature male with thick, dark brown fur and a distinctive shoulder hump that identified it as a coastal grizzly that had wandered inland. The warning shot caused the bear to recoil momentarily, but its interest in the stored venison overrode natural caution about human presence. Within seconds, massive claws resumed their assault on the doorframe while powerful jaws tested the window shutters for weaknesses that might provide access to the cabin's interior. Minutes passed like hours as Eric waited in darkness, listening to the methodical destruction of his carefully constructed shelter. Firewood scattered across the clearing while the bear investigated every possible entry point, demonstrating the intelligence and persistence that made grizzlies such formidable predators. The animal's massive paws swept through the broken doorframe, scattering Eric's equipment while searching for food sources that had attracted it initially. Canned goods rolled across the floor while stored clothing tumbled from wooden pegs, creating chaos that reflected the bear's single-minded determination to access whatever had drawn it to the cabin. Eventually, the bear's interest began to wane as it failed to locate the expected food rewards. The animal's investigation became less aggressive, suggesting that destruction of the cabin had satisfied its curiosity about potential food sources hidden within the structure. After what seemed like an eternity, heavy footsteps moved away from the cabin as the grizzly lumbered back into the forest. Eric remained motionless for another hour, listening for any indication that the bear might return to continue its investigation. Dawn revealed the extent of damage inflicted during the 3-hour siege. Deep claw marks scored the exterior walls while the door hung from twisted hinges, a testament to the incredible power possessed by North America's largest predator. Eric packed his essential gear and began the long hike back to civilization, carrying painful reminders that even well-constructed shelters offered limited protection against determined grizzly bears driven by hunger and curiosity. The rugged highlands of northern Maine stretched across the horizon in July 2017, where dense forests of spruce and fir created a perfect habitat for the massive bull moose that roamed these remote mountains. This wilderness region, located hours from the nearest town, attracted serious hunters willing to endure difficult conditions for opportunities to encounter North America's largest member of the deer family. The area's reputation for producing trophy-class bulls drew experienced outdoorsmen from across the continent. Liam Parker had been tracking a mature bull moose for 3 days, following fresh sign along ancient game trails that wound through thick forest and across boggy clearings. The 41-year-old forest ranger from Bangor possessed intimate knowledge of moose behavior, understanding their feeding patterns, travel routes, and the subtle signs that indicated the presence of truly massive animals. His .30.06 Springfield rifle had accompanied him on countless hunting expeditions throughout northern Maine, its reliable action and powerful cartridge providing confidence when facing animals that could weigh over 1,500 pounds. Liam understood that successful moose hunting required patience, woodcraft skills, and respect for animals capable of inflicting serious injury when threatened or cornered. The ridge he was following offered excellent vantage points across a series of beaver ponds where moose frequently fed during early morning hours. Fresh tracks in soft mud indicated that his quarry had passed through the area recently, probably within the previous 12 hours. Deep impressions left by massive hooves suggested an animal of exceptional size. Liam had positioned himself along a natural travel corridor where the bull would likely pass if it maintained its current movement pattern. The terrain featured scattered boulders that provided concealment, while offering clear shooting lanes across the most probable approach routes. His hunting experience indicated that patience would be rewarded if he maintained discipline and avoided premature movement. The morning air hung heavy with humidity, suggesting that afternoon thunderstorms might develop across the region. Dark clouds were already building along the western horizon, their towering formations indicating the potential for severe weather that could complicate hunting conditions significantly. Liam hoped to complete his hunt before storms arrived. At approximately 10:30, the massive bull emerged from the thick spruce forest, its impressive antlers spread immediately identifying it as a mature animal worth pursuing. The moose moved with characteristic deliberation, pausing frequently to test the air for dangerous scents while remaining alert for potential threats in the surrounding terrain. Liam slowly raised his rifle, finding the bull in his scope while calculating range and wind conditions that might affect bullet trajectory. The distance measured approximately 200 yards, well within effective range for his .30.06 cartridge when properly aimed at vital organs behind the front shoulder. However, before he could complete his shot preparation, the western sky exploded with lightning and thunder that shattered the morning silence like artillery fire. The sudden atmospheric violence startled both hunter and prey, creating chaos where careful planning had previously dominated the encounter. The bull moose reacted to the thunder with instant panic, abandoning its cautious feeding behavior to charge blindly toward higher ground. The animal's massive bulk crashed through small trees and undergrowth as it sought escape from the perceived threat, creating tremendous noise that masked Liam's movements. Liam fired quickly as the bull passed through a small clearing, hoping to anchor the animal before it disappeared into the thick forest. His shot struck the moose's shoulder but failed to penetrate vital organs, serving only to increase the animal's panic and determination to escape the area as quickly as possible. More thunder crashed overhead as the storm system moved directly over the ridge, accompanied by lightning strikes that illuminated the forest in stark, dramatic flashes. Heavy raindrops began falling, quickly developing into a torrential downpour that reduced visibility while making the rocky terrain treacherous for both predator and prey. The wounded bull continued its panicked flight, smashing through saplings while tearing bark from mature trees with its impressive antler spread. Liam attempted to follow, but the steep, rain-slicked slopes made rapid movement extremely dangerous, forcing him to proceed cautiously while the moose gained distance. Lightning struck a nearby ridge. The brilliant flash followed immediately by deafening thunder that indicated the storm's center was directly overhead. The electrical discharge seemed to drive the bull into even greater panic as it veered toward a deep ravine that offered the only escape route from the exposed ridgetop. Liam scrambled behind a massive granite boulder as another lightning strike illuminated the bull's furious eyes, revealing an animal driven beyond rational behavior by pain, fear, and the primal terror that thunderstorms inspired in most wildlife. The moose's normally cautious nature had been completely overwhelmed by circumstances beyond its control. Rain soaked through Liam's hunting clothes within minutes, the heavy downpour creating small streams that flowed down the rocky slopes while making accurate shooting nearly impossible. His rifle scope fogged repeatedly, forcing him to wipe the lenses while trying to maintain visual contact with his quarry. The combination of thunder, lightning, and driving rain created a sensory assault that affected both hunter and prey. Liam found his own nerves fraying under the constant barrage of sound and light, understanding that the storm was amplifying the moose's unpredictable behavior to dangerous levels. Minutes passed like hours as the bull thrashed through the ravine, its massive form occasionally visible through lightning flashes that briefly illuminated the chaotic scene. The animal's erratic movement pattern made tracking extremely difficult, while the treacherous footing prevented Liam from maintaining optimal positioning. Eventually, the bull moose disappeared into the depths of the forest, leaving behind only broken branches and deep hoofprints in muddy soil as evidence of its panicked passage. The storm gradually moved eastward, but its psychological impact on both participants would linger long after the thunder faded. Liam remained crouched behind his boulder shelter until the worst of the weather passed, reflecting on how quickly natural forces could transform a carefully planned hunt into a survival situation where human experience meant little against the raw power of wilderness storms. Kodiak Island's wilderness stretched across 1,300 square miles of pristine Alaskan territory in September 2020, where massive brown bears ruled an ecosystem unchanged for millennia. This remote island, accessible only by aircraft or boat, supported the world's largest population of brown bears, with mature males frequently exceeding 1,400 pounds. The challenging terrain and dangerous wildlife attracted only the most experienced hunters seeking encounters with North America's apex predator. 4 seasoned hunters had chartered a float plane from Anchorage, establishing their base camp along a salmon-rich river that attracted numerous bears during the fall feeding season. The team consisted of Marcus Hendrickson, a wildlife photographer from Colorado, Thomas Blackwood, an Alaskan hunting guide with 20 years of experience, David Clearwater, a retired military officer from Texas, and Jake Mountainheart, a hunting outfitter from Montana who specialized in dangerous game. Their objective involved locating and harvesting a mature bull moose that had been spotted in the river valley during previous scouting flights. The area's reputation for producing trophy-class moose attracted hunters willing to accept the considerable risks associated with operating in prime bear habitat during peak feeding season. Each hunter carried high-powered rifles specifically chosen for dangerous game encounters. Marcus wielded a .375 H&H Magnum loaded with premium controlled expansion bullets, while Thomas preferred his well-worn .338 Winchester Magnum that had served him reliably throughout his guiding career. David carried a .416 Rigby that reflected his preference for maximum stopping power, and Jake trusted his custom .375 Weatherby Magnum for versatility in various hunting situations. The team had implemented careful safety protocols, including constant communication, predetermined rally points, and specific procedures for dealing with bear encounters. Their collective experience totaled over 80 years of hunting dangerous game in challenging environments, providing confidence that proper preparation would ensure the successful completion of their expedition. On their third morning, fresh moose tracks led the hunters along the river's edge toward a series of beaver ponds where bulls frequently fed during early morning hours. The sign indicated an exceptionally large animal, probably weighing over 1,500 pounds, based on track measurements and stride length analysis. The hunters split into two pairs to execute a carefully planned pincer movement designed to funnel the moose toward predetermined shooting positions. Marcus and Thomas approached from the upstream direction while David and Jake circled through dense spruce forest to block potential escape routes downstream. However, none of the hunters realized that a massive Kodiak bear had been feeding on salmon carcasses in a small tributary located directly between their planned approach routes. The 1,400-pound male had established temporary residence in the area, defending his feeding territory against all intruders with characteristic aggression. The bear detected human scent as the hunters moved into position, interpreting their presence as a direct challenge to his territorial dominance. Rather than retreating as most bears would when encountering multiple humans, this particular animal chose to eliminate the perceived threat through immediate violence. Marcus first noticed movement in dense undergrowth as something large crashed through the forest toward their position. Initially, he assumed the noise indicated their target moose responding to hunting pressure by attempting escape through thick cover where shooting would be difficult. The massive bear exploded from spruce thickets with terrifying speed, covering the 50-yard distance to Marcus in seconds, while roaring challenges that echoed across the valley. His powerful limbs propelled his enormous bulk through obstacles that would stop most animals, demonstrating the incredible athleticism possessed by mature Kodiak bears. Marcus raised his .375 H&H Magnum instinctively, but the bear's charge provided minimal time for careful shot placement. His first bullet struck the animal's massive shoulder, penetrating thick hide and muscle without reaching vital organs that might have immediately stopped the attack. The bear's massive paw connected with Marcus before he could fire again, razor-sharp claws raking across his shoulder and snapping his clavicle like kindling. The impact launched him backward into thick undergrowth while tearing his rotator cuff and opening deep lacerations that immediately began bleeding heavily through his hunting jacket. Thomas attempted to provide supporting fire from his flanking position, but the dense vegetation and rapid movement made accurate shooting extremely challenging. His .338 Winchester Magnum roared repeatedly as he tried to anchor the bear without hitting his injured partner, but the animal's erratic movement pattern prevented clean shots at vital areas. Meanwhile, David heard the gunfire and began moving rapidly toward the sound of combat, crashing through thick spruce branches while trying to reach effective shooting range. His .416 Rigby represented the team's most powerful weapon, but distance and terrain prevented immediate intervention in the rapidly developing crisis. The bear turned its attention to Thomas after inflicting severe damage on Marcus, charging through small trees while absorbing additional hits from high-powered rifles. Multiple bullets had struck the animal's torso without immediately stopping its aggressive assault, demonstrating the incredible toughness that made Kodiak bears legendary among dangerous game hunters. Jake arrived from the opposite direction as the bear reached Thomas, immediately opening fire with his .375 Weatherby Magnum while trying to draw the animal's attention away from his wounded teammates. His bullets struck the bear's flank and shoulder, finally beginning to affect its coordination as blood loss mounted from multiple wounds. The bear's claws raked across Thomas's thigh, shredding muscle and opening his femoral artery before Jake's continued fire began taking effect. The animal staggered but continued fighting, its massive jaws snapping dangerously close to David's position as he finally arrived within effective range. Coordinated fire from 3 rifles gradually overwhelmed even the massive bear's legendary toughness. After absorbing 15 well-placed shots from premium hunting cartridges, the animal finally collapsed near the river's edge, its aggressive territorial defense ending only with death. The hunters immediately began first aid procedures, applying pressure bandages to control bleeding while assessing the extent of injuries sustained during the brief but violent encounter. Marcus required immediate evacuation for shoulder reconstruction surgery, while Thomas needed emergency treatment for his leg wounds. Their experience reinforced the sobering reality that even careful planning and superior firepower offered limited protection against surprise encounters with mature Kodiak bears defending established territory during peak feeding season. The pristine wilderness of northern British Columbia stretched endlessly along the remote river system in September 2024, where ancient forests of cedar and hemlock created perfect habitat for the massive bull elk that migrated through these valleys during the autumn months. This isolated region, accessible only by float plane or arduous overland journey, attracted serious hunters seeking encounters with some of North America's most impressive wildlife in completely undisturbed natural settings. Liam Parker had planned his solo elk hunting expedition for over 2 years, obtaining necessary permits and studying topographic maps that revealed the intricate network of waterways connecting prime hunting areas throughout the region. The 35-year-old carpenter from Vancouver understood that successful elk hunting required patience, physical conditioning, and intimate knowledge of animal behavior patterns during rutting season. His 17-foot aluminum canoe provided the ideal platform for accessing remote hunting locations, while carrying essential supplies for extended wilderness expeditions. The lightweight craft could navigate shallow tributaries where motorized boats could not operate, opening vast territories that remained virtually untouched by human presence. Parker's .30-06 Springfield rifle represented a classic choice for elk hunting, its proven cartridge offering sufficient power for clean kills on animals weighing over 800 pounds while remaining manageable for extended carrying in difficult terrain. He had practiced extensively with the rifle, developing confidence in his ability to place accurate shots under various hunting conditions. The morning fog hung thick over the river's surface as Parker paddled quietly upstream, following fresh elk sign along muddy banks where massive hooves had left deep impressions in soft soil. Bugling calls echoed from distant valleys, indicating that mature bulls were actively challenging rivals during the peak of rutting activity. His hunting strategy involved positioning the canoe near known crossing points where elk frequently traveled between feeding areas and bedding sites located on opposite sides of the river. The waterway's meandering course created numerous backwaters and sloughs that provided excellent concealment, while offering clear shooting lanes across likely approach routes. Parker had been paddling for approximately 2 hours when he spotted a massive bull elk moving along the shoreline roughly 300 yards upstream. The animal's impressive antler spread immediately identified it as a mature specimen worth pursuing, probably weighing over 700 pounds based on its overall body mass and confident demeanor. He began maneuvering the canoe closer, using backwater channels to minimize disturbance while closing the distance to effective shooting range. The elk continued feeding along the water's edge, occasionally raising its massive head to scan for potential threats before returning attention to aquatic vegetation. However, as Parker rounded a bend in the river, he discovered that a large black bear had been feeding on salmon carcasses along the opposite bank. The animal had not detected his presence initially, but the sound of the paddle striking aluminum suddenly alerted the bear to an unexpected intruder in its feeding territory. The bear's reaction was immediate and violent. Rather than retreating into forest cover as most bears would when encountering humans, this particular animal interpreted the canoe's presence as a direct challenge to its established feeding rights along the productive stretch of river. The black bear lunged from the riverbank without warning, its powerful limbs propelling its 400-pound bulk through shallow water toward Parker's position. The animal's aggressive behavior suggested it was either a female protecting cubs or a dominant male unwilling to abandon prime fishing territory to human intrusion. Parker instinctively fired a warning shot over the bear's head, hoping to discourage further aggression without inflicting unnecessary harm on an animal that was simply defending what it perceived as rightful territory. However, the gunshot seemed to increase the bear's determination to eliminate the perceived threat. The bear reached the canoe within seconds, its massive claws raking across the aluminum hull while attempting to climb aboard or overturn the small craft. Parker found himself fighting for balance as the canoe rocked violently under the animal's weight and aggressive movements. Sharp claws penetrated the sleeve of Parker's hunting jacket, opening deep lacerations across his forearm while drawing blood that immediately began staining his clothing. The bear's proximity made rifle use extremely dangerous, forcing him to rely on physical defense while trying to maintain control of his firearm. Parker kicked desperately with his heavy hunting boots, trying to force the bear away from the canoe while avoiding capsizing in the cold river water. His .30.06 remained ready, but the animal's erratic movements and the unstable platform made accurate shooting nearly impossible without risking accidental discharge. The bear's continued assault on the canoe created multiple punctures in the aluminum hull, allowing river water to begin entering the craft while compromising its stability and buoyancy. Parker realized that extended combat would likely result in sinking, leaving him vulnerable to continued attack while struggling in cold water. He managed to brace his rifle against the canoe's gunwale, finding a momentary stable shooting position as the bear paused in its assault. Two carefully aimed shots struck the animal's chest and shoulder, delivering sufficient trauma to discourage further aggressive behavior without inflicting immediately fatal wounds. The injured bear retreated toward shore, allowing Parker to assess damage to both himself and his equipment. His forearm required immediate attention to control bleeding, while the punctured canoe needed emergency repairs to prevent sinking before he could reach safe landing areas. Parker applied field dressings to his wounds while using duct tape to seal the worst hull punctures, creating temporary repairs that might allow him to reach shore before the canoe became completely unseaworthy. His hands trembled from adrenaline and cold as he worked frantically to maintain buoyancy. The damaged canoe barely remained afloat during his cautious paddle to the nearest suitable landing site, where he could complete more permanent repairs and properly treat his injuries. Water continued seeping through multiple small holes despite his emergency patching efforts, requiring constant bailing to prevent complete submersion. Once safely ashore, Parker spent considerable time reflecting on the encounter while cleaning his wounds and repairing his equipment. The experience had demonstrated how quickly routine hunting situations could transform into life-threatening emergencies when dealing with unpredictable wildlife behavior. His respect for black bears increased significantly after learning firsthand about their swimming ability, aggressive territorial behavior, and willingness to attack humans under specific circumstances. Future hunting expeditions would include enhanced safety protocols for water-based operations in prime bear habitat. The incident reinforced his understanding that successful wilderness hunting required constant vigilance, proper equipment maintenance, and psychological preparation for encounters with dangerous wildlife that could occur without warning in even seemingly peaceful natural settings.